There aren't enough men in this world who understand their responsibility towards their wives. Never mind men who understand their responsibility toward their future wives. In this video, I want to explain part of the plight which young women face today in our society, drawing on knowledge which I have gained from A Case Against the Sexual Revolution, a book by Louise Perry. And I also want to talk about how an understanding of the problems which young women are facing today in our society can be of vital importance to helping us as young men to navigate our own crisis. I believe that such an understanding could be of huge benefit in this regard, and it has been for me at least, because if we can understand that women are having a tough time and that there is something that we can do about it, in fact, that there is something that we need to do about it, it can be a huge source of meaning and purpose in our lives. Before I get into that though, I want to make two things clear. So firstly, I'm in no way suggesting that women have no burden to shoulder or responsibility to take on in life, and that men can just swoop in and save them. Men need women as much as women need men. In general, a man and a woman come together to complete each other, and if you don't have a partner in life, it is exceedingly difficult. And this goes for both men and women, and I recognize that. However, in this video, I'm going to talk about a man's responsibility towards his future wife, because this channel is based on the lessons which I have learned over the past 2 years, which have helped me, and the understanding that I have gained surrounding problems which young women are facing has allowed me to derive more meaning and purpose in my life. Secondly, I understand that the topic which this video is centered around is very deep and complex, and that I as a 19-year-old possibly have no authority to speak on it. However, I come back to the principle of my channel. I believe that I have learned a lot in the past 2 years, and the things that I'm going to talk about have been incredibly beneficial to me and to my progression forward. Despite my clear and obvious ignorance of many of the factors playing into the topic at hand, I believe that I have no right to simply ignore the massive benefits to my mental state which have come about as a result of an understanding of the things I'm going to talk about in this video. And if you want to dispute that I have benefited from the ideas in this video, you can take it up with my mother. So the problem which I want to focus on in particular, which young women are facing today in our society, is how the sexual revolution of the 1960s handed them over into the hands of the worst of men. So we have to go back to the 1960s, when the introduction of the contraceptive pill and more widely available contraception resulted in women being told that they should have sex like men, and the disenchantment and desacralization of sex took a massive leap forward. Reliable contraception was one of the biggest technological revolutions ever. It changed the lives of young women forever, and in order to understand the responsibility that we have towards young women today, we need to understand what changed with its introduction. So contraception basically allows a woman to put her fertility on hold. Now, while we might like to think that this just means that she can have sex willy-nilly, unwanted pregnancy is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the unwanted consequences of casual sex. Sex is such a complicated thing that we cannot even begin to comprehend how it can impact our lives. But a lot of the other impacts and unwanted consequences which casual sex can have impact men as well. And so the introduction of contraception has meant that women are about as free as men to have sex willy-nilly. The disparity in the freedom to have sex has been massively reduced. That is true. And this was the impact of reliable contraception. In order to see how this is relevant to young women today, we need to ask ourselves who benefited from this, if anyone. Feminists in the 1960s were not the only people who proclaimed that women were now free to have sex like men. Another group of people who beat on this particular drum, possibly even harder than the feminists, were the playboys, the Hugh Hefners of this world. Hugh Hefner advocated for the rights of women right throughout the 1970s, and there were 30 commentaries published in the Playboy magazine on the Roe versus Wade case leading up to the legalization of abortion in 1973. Now, why do we think that is? It doesn't take much thought to realise that Playboy did not benefit women. It doesn't take much thought to realise that Hugh Hefner didn't really care about the rights of women. You only have to go and look at Marilyn Monroe and her life to understand this. I believe that Hugh Hefner, like many of the world's psychopaths, realised that the best way to hide one's evil intentions is under the guise of appealing to what is highest. Hugh Hefner, by proclaiming that he was so upright and moral that all he cared about was the liberation and the rights of women, was able to hide the fact that what he was truly aiming at was the removal of all possible reasons that women might still have to say no to sex. Then, Hefner was free to pursue his own destructive hedonism with minimal consequence. Never mind consequence. He somehow managed to convince everyone that his relentless pursuit of instant gratification wasn't that at all. Instead, he was fighting for female empowerment. He didn't face consequences. He received praises and honours from the feminists. We have no idea how significant these types of men were in pushing the female sexual freedom narrative. In my opinion, their importance can hardly be understated. This type of ulterior motive is what the commandment, "Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain," was warning us against. It doesn't just mean that you must refrain from saying the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, like my parents so often scolded me for. It means that you must not claim to be devoted to what is highest, to what is good and true. You must not claim to be devoted to God in order to use it as an excuse to hide your evil intentions. A sin like this is so great that it was a defining feature of one of Christ's main foes in the Gospels, the Pharisees. So the Pharisees were accused of praying in public and using the Lord's name to their own ends because they didn't truly care about worshipping the Lord or following his ways. They were hypocrites. All they cared about was storing up their own wealth by abusing their position as Pharisees. In the same way, Hugh Hefner used the feminist movement for his own ends. To me, this indicates that the Playboys were instrumental to the shift in sexual culture that occurred in the 1960s, because this type of evil is so prevalent throughout our history. The key takeaway here is again that the sexual revolution of the 1960s gave women over into the hands of the worst of men. Not only were these men instrumental to the change in culture that occurred in the 1960s, but men who seek out short-term mating strategies over long-term relationships are by definition psychopathic, narcissistic, and manipulative. This isn't difficult to see because pursuing casual sex literally turns you into a manipulative narcissist. That is how you can be successful in this area. There aren't many men who are high status enough to be attractive to women instantly, or who can entice women truly in one night. So the majority of men are going to have to lie. They're going to have to inflate their status, or how tall they are, or how much money they have, or what age they are. And even if you are a high status, highly successful man, you're still going to have to manipulate that woman into believing that you care for her, that you have her best interests at heart. Because it's highly unlikely that a woman will get into bed with you if they believe that all you want is a one-night stand. That's just simply not what they are attracted to. And yes, there are women out there who are particularly promiscuous, but in general, you're going to have to lie if you prefer short-term mating strategies. If you maintain such a preference through time, it trains you to have psychopathic tendencies. Because if you don't, you're not going to be successful in the casual sex market. I could go on and on about the terrible consequences that the disenchantment of sex caused by the sexual revolution has had on women. It goes far beyond just handing them over to psychopaths. From the book by Louise Perry, A Case Against the Sexual Revolution, I learned a lot about how damaging the sexual culture that we have today is to women. And there are many, many more points to add to the one that I've outlined here. And that is just the sexual culture. That is only one aspect of the terrible problems which women are facing. But that isn't the main purpose of this video. The most valuable lesson that I gained from that book is that I have a responsibility to be a better man and not contribute to the horrific sexual culture that we see today. Like I said, I could go on and on about porn and BDSM, encouraging loveless sex, the idea of consent and how it has become so central, and I could vent my frustrations about society, no problem. But this type of virtue signaling and finger wagging isn't valuable or helpful to you, but the following perspective which I gained from reading said book just might be. It is very difficult to find meaning and purpose in life. Possibly, it is one of the most difficult things that we can do. If you're watching this video, it's most likely that you've been trying to get better in your life. You've been trying to improve. And if you've been attempting to do so, you'll have realized that you need to suffer in the present and immediate future. There are no two ways about it. Improvement requires a voluntary sacrifice of comfort and gratification. So why do it? What is the purpose or meaning behind it all? If you don't have an answer to these questions, you aren't going to make the necessary sacrifices. There's a quote from Nietzsche: "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Well, he who doesn't have a why to live has no reason to get up, get out there, and have the adventure that life should be. We as young men face a crisis which is just as bad as that of young women, and the burden of facing up to it can sometimes seem much too heavy to carry. But we need to realize that carrying it does not solely contribute to the betterment of our lives. While self-improvement may seem to only provide benefit to the self, that should never be its ultimate goal. There is a paradoxical element to the idea of self-improvement. If your goal with self-improvement is selfish and only focused on the benefits that you will receive, then I truly believe that you won't make any kind of significant progress at all. To me, this is why a lot of people fail when they set a goal related to the self-improvement trend, which has been popular for quite a while now. If the reason why you have set this goal isn't embedded in a higher purpose or principle, it is most likely that things will fall apart when the going gets tough. This is because self-improvement and the improvement of yourself is not enough of a purpose to keep you moving forward and to weather the storm of life, because the going will get incredibly tough. You can attempt to embark on a self-improvement journey to focus on yourself, or you can disappear for a while and come back to prove them wrong, or you can channel all your hatred into your winter arc. But with such self-centered interests, I truly believe that you will not get what you're searching for. Like I said, what I've talked about in this video doesn't even come close to telling the full story of the struggles that women are facing in our society today. And with the way our current Western culture and politics are going, with the divide between men and women only growing, and with more and more people believing that any relationship between a man and a woman is a zero-sum game, things are not getting any easier. But there is a woman out there who is truly trying to change things. And she has faith that there is a man out there who is doing the same. That there is a man out there who she can grow with, who can challenge her, who can motivate her to do better, who she can cooperate with to solve her own problems and to solve his problems. And maybe even the problems of others, of the community, of society, of the world. She believes that there's a man out there who she can rely on in the future, a man who can be a witness to her victories and losses, a man who she can rely on for better or worse, richer or poorer. But she's having a really tough time and she can't do it on her own. But she believes that a relationship between a man and a woman is not a zero-sum game, and that she can help you out in the same way that you can help her out. But that's only going to be possible if you do your best. There is a serious lack of this type of man in our society today. If you can't find the strength to stay consistent and do your best, maybe you are looking in the wrong places. Maybe realizing that if you do not make the proper sacrifices and do your best, you will deprive not only yourself of the ability to withstand the suffering inherent to existence, but also the woman of your dreams. Maybe this realization could be a newfound source of strength for you. Your refusal to give your best has a much broader impact than you might think. When you find yourself at a loss for the motivation to keep going and to give it your very best, you need to keep going, because if you don't, then the world will only become more intolerable and more insufferable. You will only introduce unavoidable suffering into your life, which means nothing, because you refused to confront the meaningful suffering that presented itself to you voluntarily. Maybe you don't care enough about yourself for that to be enough motivation. Well, that isn't all. There is also a girl out there who needs you to be a man. She can't face life alone in the same way you can't face life alone. She needs that synergistic relationship with a man. You're not only going to feel yourself if you don't make the necessary sacrifices. You'll feel her and you'll feel the world. This can be extended all the way up to the highest unifying principle that doing good over bad always has a transcendent meaning of vital importance. That doing your very best and never offering second-rate sacrifices is always worth it. I thought that beginning with the plight of women and showing you that there's something that you can do to benefit others, to benefit something outside of yourself, could open your eyes to a new kind of meaning and purpose in your life. Self-improvement and focusing on yourself is incredibly beneficial, but sometimes self-betterment just doesn't provide enough motivation for you to weather the storm of life. Reading A Case Against the Sexual Revolution by Louise Perry opened my eyes to the fact that there's someone out there who needs me to be a man as much as I need myself to be a man, and that the world needs me to be a man too. That my responsibilities do not only lie in bettering my own life, that we can never underestimate the importance of the individual. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. I hope you gained something from what I've laid out in this video. And thanks again. God bless.